You see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart? And that'll be on other countries to help
millions of Canadians. We're going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures.
Subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year.
We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7.
Did you know that Canada has become Trump's worst nightmare? Tourism from our neighbors up north to the US has dropped by 85% in some regions, hitting America right in the wallet. Those polite Canadians aren't just saying sorry anymore. They're saying no to Trump. Ordinary Canadians are leading a revolution that's spreading across the globe. European countries are following Canada's lead in boycotting American products and even selling off US Treasury bonds to put pressure on Trump's economy. Turns out the maple leaf packs quite a punch when it's riled up. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Meet Sarah from Toronto, who hasn't crossed the border since Trump called Canada America's hat. She used to visit Buffalo for shopping weekends, but now, not a chance.
At the same time, President Trump confirmed that the tariffs announced last week against our auto industry will come in, and indeed have come into effect today. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs remain in place and will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. So while it's progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada yesterday, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world.
I'd rather eat my winter boot than give that man a single loonie, she tells me, adjusting her maple leaf pin. Sarah isn't alone. She's part of a massive wave of Canadians who've decided their wallets shouldn't vacation in Trump's America either. Ordinary Canadians have figured out Trump's biggest weakness, his obsession with money, and they're hitting him right in his designer wallet. The boycott started small, with folks like Dave Michaels from Vancouver canceling his annual golf trip to Palm Springs. My buddies gave me grief at first, Dave admits, but then they joined in. Now we play at Whistler instead, and honestly, the beer's better. What began as scattered personal choices has exploded into something much bigger. The so-called Maple Curtain has slammed down, with millions of Canadians suddenly discovering they don't need American products or vacation destinations after all.
Yesterday marked the latest in President Trump's unprecedented series of U.S. tariffs that are designed to reshape the international trading system. We received confirmation that the latest reciprocal tariffs will not be imposed on Canada. The ambition of these measures is enormous. The effects on the global economy will be monumental.
Border towns like Darby Line, Vermont are feeling the pinch, their main streets looking more like ghost towns as Canadian shoppers vanish. Meanwhile, Canadian alternatives are thriving. Take Moosehead Market in Halifax, where owner Jen Pierce stripped her shelves of American goods last summer. People thought I was crazy, she laughs, but sales jumped 42% in 2 months. Turns out customers were looking for an excuse to buy local anyway. Her bestseller, a maple syrup that's labeled actually comes from trees, not orange presidents. The Buy Canadian movement isn't just patriotic posturing. It's creating real economic impact. Estimates show a $10 billion boost to the Canadian economy as dollars that used to flow south now circulate domestically. Small businesses from Victoria to St. John's report record sales as consumers deliberately seek Canadian-made alternatives for everything from kitchen appliances to children's toys. The absence of Canadian tourists is creating eerie scenes across America. Camera footage from Niagara Falls shows the stark contrast, the Canadian side bustling with visitors, while the American side looks eerily abandoned. Hotel owners in places like Myrtle Beach and Orlando are panicking as their reliable northern customers disappear. One Florida resort owner complained, "The Canadians were 30% of my winter business. Now they're gone, and they took their politeness with them." Even Times Square, once crawling with maple leaf-wearing tourists, has noticeably fewer A's being uttered. Tour guide Miguel Rodriguez says, "I used to be able to spot Canadians a mile away, always apologizing and asking where to find good poutine. Now it's just a sea of confused Europeans and Americans taking selfies." But perhaps the most brilliant part of this boycott is what Canadians are doing instead. The government-backed Canada Strong Pass gives families free access to national museums, historic sites, and discounted rail travel across the country. The Trudeau family from Montreal proudly showed off their well-used pass. "We were going to Disney this year," explains 10-year-old Emma, "but Dad said we should explore our own country first. I liked Banff better anyway." No lines. This isn't just individuals making choices. Major organizations are joining in too. When the Toronto Maple Leafs announced they would stay in Canadian hotels during US road trips, other NHL teams followed suit. Even Tim Hortons pledged to source coffee beans through Canadian distributors rather than American middlemen. The financial impact keeps growing, leaving economists stunned at just how powerful this grassroots movement has become.
Have been imposed under different premises. Some things are consistent. They are all unjustified, unwarranted, and in our judgment, misguided. That's 3,600 workers who are now out of work, not by their choice. Workers who now worry how they're going to put food on the table and pay their bills. Just last evening, workers from Unifor Local 444, with whom I met last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks.
Tourism officials in Maine report an 82% drop in Canadian visitors. Vermont ski resorts have seen their Canadian clientele plummet by nearly 85%. Border crossing statistics show weekend traffic down by 78% at major entry points. The numbers add up to a staggering blow. Economists now project losses exceeding $30 billion annually to the American economy if Canadians maintain their boycott. And all signs suggest they're just getting started. As one boycott organizer put it, "Americans vote every 4 years. Canadians vote with our wallets every single day." But this isn't even the most damaging part of Canada's resistance. While Americans might notice fewer Canadian license plates in their parking lots, something much more significant is happening behind the scenes. Something that has Wall Street executives checking their blood pressure medications. While Americans might be griping about missing Canadian snowbirds, Mark Carney is playing a much deadlier game with America's financial future. As the former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, Carney knows exactly where to place the knife to make Wall Street bleed. He's not just some random politician. This guy navigated through the Great Recession and Brexit like it was a Sunday drive. And now, he's using all that fancy financial know-how to orchestrate Canada's most devastating counterattack. In early March, while Americans were busy whining about empty tourist attractions, Canada quietly began selling off some of its massive holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds. You probably don't realize it, but Canada is sitting on mountains of American IOUs. They're the third largest foreign holder of U.S. debt, or at least they were. Now they're cashing in those chips at the worst possible time for Trump. This financial maneuver is designed specifically to cause economic pain, explains Dr. Melissa Chen, a Toronto-based financial analyst. We caught up with her as she was analyzing the latest market fluctuations. Most Americans don't understand how bond markets work, so let me break it down real simple. It's like everyone in your neighborhood decided to cash in all the IOUs they've been holding from that loud, obnoxious neighbor who keeps insulting them. Suddenly, that neighbor needs to come up with a lot of cash, fast. Footage from trading floors shows the confusion that erupted when bond prices started behaving oddly. In one clip from Bloomberg, a bewildered analyst points to unexplained dips in Treasury bond prices. We're seeing unusual selling pressure from sources we can't clearly identify," he stammers, clearly perplexed by what was happening. Of course, now we know exactly what was happening. Canada was quietly dumping American debt. But Carney wasn't content with just Canada taking action. Sources indicate that around March 17th, he held secret meetings with European financial leaders.
Today, I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States. Our tariffs, though, unlike the U.S. tariffs, will not affect auto parts because we know the benefits of our integrated production system. And as well, we are developing a framework for auto producers in Canada to get relief from these counter tariffs. Last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks.
While we couldn't get official confirmation of these meetings, they're secret, the evidence suggests Carney was teaching these Europeans how to sell off U.S. bonds without making it super obvious. It's like giving someone instructions on how to key your enemy's car without getting caught on security cameras. Look at these patterns. Dr. Chen points to a series of trading charts showing synchronized dips across different markets. This isn't random. Someone coordinated this, someone who understands exactly how to apply maximum pressure without causing a total market collapse. The real bombshell dropped when UK Prime Minister Starmer reportedly contacted Carney with a shocking admission: the existing relationship with the United States is over. We'll follow Canada's lead on this. That revelation sent additional tremors through financial markets, as traders realized this wasn't just Canada having a temper tantrum. This was the beginning of a coordinated international response. The beauty of Carney's strategy is its surgical precision. They're not trying to crash the American economy completely. That would hurt Canada too. Instead, they're applying targeted pressure directly on the Trump administration's ability to fund their policies. Higher borrowing costs make everything more expensive for the U.S. government, from building walls to funding tax cuts for billionaires. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick tried to sound tough, warning that if Canada maintained its counter tariffs, it would be a really bad choice. He suggested Trump would respond with even harsher measures. But honestly, he sounded like a kid threatening to tell the teacher after getting punched in the playground. How exactly is Canada executing this financial warfare? Since March, they've strategically sold off over $15 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. That might not sound like much compared to America's total debt, but in the delicate world of bond markets, it's like removing just the right Jenga pieces to make the whole tower wobble. The selling has been carefully paced to create market instability without causing catastrophic collapse. The impact is already visible. Borrowing costs for the U.S. government have crept upward, directly constraining Trump's ability to fund his grand plans. Remember all those infrastructure promises? Good luck paying for them with higher interest rates. That border wall? Each brick just got more expensive. Tax cuts for Trump's billionaire buddies? Not looking so affordable anymore. What makes this strategy so devilishly effective is its invisibility to average Americans. While they might notice fewer Canadian license plates at their favorite tourist traps, they won't see the financial warfare happening in the obscure world of bond trading. But they'll feel the effects as government programs face budget cuts, interest rates climb, and economic growth slows. Financial attacks may damage Trump's wallet, but his 51st state comment wounded Canada's national soul and unleashed a backlash that nobody saw coming. When Trump casually suggested on Fox News that Canada should become America's 51st state, claiming, "We need their territory," and referring to Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau, he managed something truly remarkable, uniting 38 million fiercely independent people against him overnight. Canadian Member of Parliament Charlie Angus became the unexpected face of this resistance. His impassioned speech, delivered with the kind of fury rarely seen in typically polite Canadian politics, instantly resonated across the country. "We are not America's hat. We are not America's backyard, and we will never be America's 51st state," Angus thundered in a video that spread faster than maple syrup on hot pancakes. Those weren't just words. They became the battle cry for a nation that suddenly remembered exactly why it never wanted to be American in the first place. The speech hit a nerve because it perfectly captured what millions of Canadians were feeling. Trump's comments weren't just politically tone-deaf, they were an assault on Canadian identity itself. Within days, spontaneous protests erupted across major cities from Vancouver to Halifax. In Toronto's Yonge Dundas Square, thousands gathered with homemade signs declaring "Hands off Canada" and "Proud to be not American." The rallying cry, "Elbows up," echoed through the crowds, a uniquely Canadian expression of defiance that managed to be both forceful and somehow still polite. One Toronto protester, a 67-year-old grandmother named Margaret, told reporters with tears in her eyes, "We've been good neighbors for centuries, and this is how he treats us." Her sentiment was echoed across the country as Canadians from all walks of life expressed their outrage. The phrase wasn't just about hurt feelings, it captured the profound sense of betrayal many Canadians felt toward a country they'd long considered their closest ally. What's made this backlash so powerful is how it transcends traditional political divisions. Conservative farmers in Alberta stood alongside liberal college students from Quebec. Indigenous leaders joined forces with new immigrants. The fury at Trump's dismissive attitude created strange political bedfellows, uniting Canadians who'd normally disagree on everything else. In Red Deer, Alberta, a conservative stronghold, ranchers and oil workers joined university students in a protest that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. Jamie Trones, head of the Center for North American Prosperity and Security, observed, "This has led to a resurgent nationalism, which is something that we haven't seen the likes of in a long time in Canada that has really benefited the Liberal Party. The surge in patriotism has transformed Canadian politics in ways nobody predicted, with national identity suddenly taking center stage in political discourse." For the Conservative Party, Trump's comments created a political nightmare. Their perceived alignment with Trump and his politics has become what political insiders call a death sentence in Canadian politics. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who had adopted the slogan "Canada First" in an apparent nod to Trump's "America First," suddenly found his campaign messaging backfiring spectacularly. As Carney pointedly asked during a campaign event, "Who's the worst person to stand up to Donald Trump?" Pierre Poilievre. "He worships the man. He uses his language. He's not the right person for our country at this crucial time." The political landscape shifted dramatically. As polling expert Daryl Bricker of Ipsos Public Affairs noted, all signs pointed to the Liberals being decimated in an election year, and then two things happened. The first was Justin Trudeau stepping down in January, but the second and more impactful factor was Trump's threats and insults. What was supposed to be a conservative cakewalk suddenly became a neck-and-neck race, with some polls showing the Liberals pulling ahead. The upcoming election has transformed from a referendum on domestic issues into a fundamental question about who can best handle the Trump factor. As one political analyst put it, the election is no longer about Trudeau. It's no longer about a carbon tax. It is about a much more existential question, about what's best for Canada and who is best to do that. Trump's 51st state comment has managed to awaken a level of Canadian national pride not seen in generations. It's reminiscent of the famous 1972 Summit Series hockey victory over the Soviet Union, a moment when Canadian identity crystallized around standing up to a much larger power. Except this time, the adversary isn't the USSR, but their supposed best friend. The backlash has been so effective that it's changed the fundamental calculation of Canadian politics. Prime Minister Carney's approval ratings have soared as he's taken a firm stance against Trump's bullying. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party finds itself in the uncomfortable position of appearing too close to a foreign leader who's openly disrespecting Canadian sovereignty. What began as Canada standing up to Trump has sparked something much bigger. The elbows up movement isn't just a Canadian thing anymore, it's gone global. Countries everywhere are watching and cheering as regular Canadians show the world that you don't need to be a superpower to stand up to a bully. This resistance could actually reshape how Canada and America do business together long term. The border, trade agreements, economic relationships, everything might look different after this. The most beautiful part? It's everyday people making this happen. As one Canadian farmer put it, we're just ordinary folks who've had enough. And turns out, when ordinary folks stand together, we're not so ordinary after all.